Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 178 of Build Your Stash and Craft. We are still working with what we have in our craft room, or in our craft stash that we've collected since the beginning of this series. And so what we're going to do today, I had shown these tags that I made a long time ago, and I was doing my craft with me, crafting along with Sonia Steptoe, and I was asked could I show how to make these. So this is what we're going to do today, a little bit differently because I don't have any lace in my stash. And so but see, this is lace behind with the stamping on top of the lace. And then this one is a finer lace. But both of these laces, I can tell you, these are both old sheer curtains. So if you think you need to go out and buy expensive lace, go to your secondhand store, buy a sheer curtain of some sort, you know, a lacy curtain, and you have enough lace for a really long time. You can make a lot of things out of that. So maybe once we get back to being able to go out again, that's what we'll get a lace curtain for our stash so that we have some lace. But this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you how to do this. But since we don't have lace, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do it. So the first thing is we have the shelf liner that we bought. And so this is what we're going to use in place of our lace for the first one. And I have cut just a tag, or whatever you call it, a journaling card. And I am just going to, I'm going to cut it bigger. And then I will trim it down afterwards because I want the lace. We're going to just call all this stuff that we're working with, we're going to call it lace. And I want it to be the same size as my backing card. So we'll just do this and then use some of our tacky glue to glue it on. Move that one out of the way. And I just want to make sure that I've got my glue everywhere so that it will grab hold of that. I've got some string stuck to the end of my glue. And then I just want to make sure that I get it out to the edges. Don't let your card move if you're doing it where you're working so that you don't get a bunch of glue on the other side. And you can use this as a card front. You can use this as a journaling card. As in, you can make ATC cards this way. Just an embellishment on some kind of a project that you're doing. You can use it in mixed media. I'm just going to put this on top. And then I'm going to move it over and press it down. There we go. Now, that's gonna, I do have a paper towel here, so kind of get this glue off my hands and wipe this glue down a little bit so it'll dry faster. Okay, and then we're just going to trim around this from the back. Always easier to trim something from the back. Whoop. There we go. And you can do a bunch of these at the same time. You can do a whole sheet of paper. This is cardstock. You can put on whatever you'd like to. But you can do the whole sheet covered with lace, especially if you get yourself a lace curtain. You know, you've got plenty of it to work with. And then if you've been watching my series for a long time, then you know what we're going to do with it. We're going to stick it in a heavy book. That's Papa's rule. Except Papa's rule really is stick it in a heavy book overnight and let the glue dry. I don't usually wait till overnight. But not only is this going to keep my card flat, it's going to, you know, give it some time to let the glue dry. So I'm going to put this open and then flip through it because There we go. And I'm using parchment paper so that it doesn't stick to my book. Set that one aside and we'll get out this one. All right, so this one I actually just put in there so it's not doing me a whole lot of good. Okay, I'm going to tell you what to do if you have a piece of paper that's really warped. And the easiest way to do this is on the edge of your like kitchen counter or something, a nice flat edge, not a rounded edge. But what you're going to do is you've got the edge of a counter, the edge of your desk, anything that has a nice square surface to it. This is not the best because it's not real square. But what you do is just take it and put your hand flat on the countertop or, whatever you're pulling it through, and then just pull it through and down. Okay, now we're going to do that because we didn't get over here because we were hanging on to it. So you're going to put your hand right on the edge of your counter surface, and you're going to go like that. You can also do it this way if you want to, depending on how curled it is, and then flip it over and do the same thing. Pulling down, because the pulling down is what's making those fibers go kind of back where you want them to go. And there we go. Now this is much flatter than it was just a few minutes ago. It's still not perfectly flat, but we're going to get it wet with water glue, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But this is just our shimmer sprays that we made. There's blue and purple. My purple got clogged up, so my blue sprayed and dripped a little bit. And then my purple was clogged up, and so I just took the dropper out, or whatever you call that, the sprayer out, and just like dropped a bunch of it on there to get my color. So now what we're going to do, let's set that aside still for a second. We're going to get some tissue paper, regular white tissue paper. This one has a shiny side and a non-shiny side. I prefer to stamp on the non-shiny side. I don't know that it really makes a difference, but that's just the way that I like to do it. And then I picked out a couple of our Hampton Art stamps to use. Is that one bigger than this one? It is. Oh, I know. I figured I was only going to use... Yep, I'm not going to stamp the whole thing. I could always cut it off too or rip it off. But, whoops, it's bigger than the cardstock that I cut. So I'm just going to come down here and make sure that I've got it all over the place. Yeah, I don't have any right in there. Okay. And sorry for the shaking. And then, whoops, I got it all over my tissue paper already. I'm going to come over here. And I'm just going to press that down. Now, it's not about how hard you press. I say this all the time. It is about how long you leave it on your paper. Now, you do want to make sure that it's making contact everywhere. So you kind of want to give it a little press everywhere, but you don't have to, really press it super, super hard. Just to give the ink time to soak into your paper, and you'll get a much better image. And it seems like it's a really long time. Like when I'm talking to you, it doesn't seem like that long of a time. But when you're doing it yourself, it's like, oh, it's been long enough, So, but just make sure you give it enough time. And see how nice of we got a really nice print there. Then what we're going to do is, yep, that whole thing will fit on. So I'm just going to rip my tissue paper along the edges of that. Doesn't need to be perfect, but ripped tissue paper will blend into your background more than cut tissue paper, and that works for napkins too. That frayed edge, the glue really, it's kind of like your paper kind of feathers when you rip it, and that edge blends in much better than if you were to cut a straight edge with your scissors. So if you can just rip it, it's a little bit better. It blends in more. And so there we go. there's that one. Okay, I'm going to rip a little bit more off the bottom because I'm going to take a little bit more of this off here. There's no point in having it stick out there. And then I'm going to come right across about here, because I really don't want it the size of my paper either. Yeah, that'll fit on there nicely. And just, you know, if you have to play with it a little bit to get it how you want it to look, you just do that. Okay, so I'm going to say that's good. And while we've got our ink out, I'm going to do the other one. Let's see, I need the tissue paper. And this one I'm going to do the whole thing because my other tag is bigger, so it will fit. Put that one on there. And I am not the best cleaner of my stamps. When you use StazOn, you can clean your stamps with rubbing alcohol. That will take off permanent ink. And then wash them just in some soapy water, like, you know, like dish soap and water, and wash them off so you're not leaving that rubbing alcohol, which could possibly be harsh. You're not leaving that on your stamp. So that's the way to clean any kind of a permanent ink or solvent ink. So I'm just going to put this one on here. And just make sure I try and press it everywhere. Give it a little chance to sit there. You can also flip this over the other way and take your paper to your stamp. And that's a good way to make sure that you get really even coverage. That works well with cardstock. With tissue paper, not so well, because the ink goes through the tissue paper and the tissue paper, you know, is so delicate. But with a cardstock, it's easy to put your cardstock on the stamp. You take your stamp and you take your cardstock to the stamp. It's on your thing, and then you take it there, and then that makes it so that you can rub this whole surface. And again, you don't have to rub it hard. You just have to make sure it's making contact everywhere and that you give the ink enough time to soak off of the stamp and into the paper. And so there we go. Now we have that one. That one's going to be for our other one. So we're going to set him aside. Put both of my stamps on my block so I don't lose them. And set that aside. Okay, so now we've got this one. But we're not going to use that. I'm going to show you another lace. And I love the way that this one turned out. This is just a it's a snowflake, you know, like you cut when you were a child. And I love making these. I use them for a lot of different things. I'm going to show you really quickly how to do it. I've shown this a lot lately. You'll find out when you're crafting that you kind of like find something that you really love and you do it for a long time. And then you'll just, you know, one day you'll just kind of like stop doing it, and then, you know, a year down the line or something, you'll find one and go, oh, I want to do those again. So at least that's what I do. I find that when I find something I really like doing, I wind up doing it for a while. Some things I never stop. I love making my own stamps with fun foam, and I do those all the time. So basically, I'm sorry, I wasn't even telling you what I was doing, but we're going to just do a quick one. You need a square of paper. Okay, then you just fold it point to point, fold it again and again. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to cut on your folds. We can even make it rounded, you know, kind of flower shaped by rounding the top. And then I always, so that I have a little hole in the center, I cut off the tip. But when you want, unless you want a really big hole in the center, you just cut off the tip. You know, you don't, I just barely cut that tip off. And then all you do is you come in from this side and you come in from this side. Make sure that they do not meet each other, or it will cut a great big huge chunk out. But you're just going to cut some shapes this way And you can use these even for stencils. You can use them just like they are to just put on a project. They come in really handy for all sorts of things. You can even make, use them for stamps if you make them out of fun foam. They're not as easy to make out of fun foam, but you can do it. And you just went ahead and then, whoops, throw it on the floor. And then after you throw it on the floor, then you do the other side. And again, now you want to not leave a great big huge space in the middle, because if you do, there will be a big space of just paper right there. So you want to make sure that when you're coming in from this way, that you get close to the other side, but not close enough to cut all the way through, because you'll cut your snowflake right apart. If you want, you can come in from the top. When you come in from the top, it just makes whatever shape you just cut. So I'm going to cut a little triangle right here, and there will be a little triangle on the top. These ones will all be like a mirror image of what you cut when you unfold it. You want to make sure that you leave, these are all of your folds, and so you want to make sure that you leave a little bit of a space between each one of your little things that you're cutting. Because if you were to cut off that whole fold, then it would just be, the whole thing would fall apart. Or you would just have a great big huge blank space. And so you just keep going until you get to the bottom. Last one right here. And sometimes if I flip it over to cut it, because it's easier for me to cut like from a certain angle. And there we go. So you just have your square, and you just fold it and then cut on the folds. And then this is what you can wind up with. And they're just really pretty. They turn out really nice, and you just take your time. And then you have, basically, we just made our own little piece of paper lace. So I got some water glue here. Water glue is just 2 parts water to 1 part glue. And I think I'm going to set this on a piece of parchment so that I can move it when I'm done. I don't want to glue it to my paper. Get rid of all those little bits so that I don't get them in the glue. And I colored this. I should have colored it a little bit darker, because I kind of wanted it to show through the lace and the napkin. Now the ones that I had done before, I did white background, white lace, and then black stays on, and figured that if I ever wanted to, put it in something, I could color it at that time or leave it white. So just cover it with glue, put your lace on. Really, it doesn't matter which way you go, it's folded. Some of the folds go up and some of the folds go down, so no matter what. Okay, so you put your lace on. You don't have to let your lace dry, because you're just going to cover it with glue again anyways. But you do want to make sure that your lace has made contact. Well, I ripped it. You want to make sure that it's glued down everywhere. And then take your tissue paper, put it on top of your lace. And because that's wet underneath, I don't have to put glue underneath because it's there. If I were to come back later, if I'd put my lace on here and come back later, and that had dried, I would have put glue on the lace. And we're going to call that lace because that's our lace for now. And then we are just going to go in and kind of tap on our tissue paper to kind of push it down into the little lace bit so that it doesn't just sit on top. Kind of smooth out the bubbles that kind of come from your glue. And if this had been darker, we would have seen our lace a little bit more. Just kind of tap that down into the little openings. And of course our paper is not quite as quick as thick as a piece of lace would be. kind of get rid of those bubbles. And the reason I used Stays On is because Stays On does not smear with water. And so there we go. I don't know if you can see very well, but you can see our lace behind there. You don't have to cover all of the lace with your tissue paper. You can just put, maybe on this one it would have been better for me to just put something small in the middle so that it would have, because that's what I always did before. I made smaller things and just put them in the middle. But I think that this is going to look really pretty when it dries. I wonder if I kind of massage that in there a little bit, if that might bring it out a little more. A little bit. But there we go. That is how you make them. And we will put this one aside. I'll leave that there. Put that one over on a dry piece. We'll grab our other one really quickly. We're just going to get it wet again anyway, so that's okay. Although I don't want to put it, flip that tissue paper over. I didn't want to put it in that glue. So this one, we're not going to cover up all the lace because our stamp's not that large. But before we put the glue on there, we need to tear out the stamp that we want to put on there. Now, if you've stamped it with a stamp with a ink that is going to smear with the water, you can try putting the stamped side down so that when you paint across it, you're not smearing it with your brush. Now, it may still like wick out onto your tissue paper and not work. I haven't tried that, but if that's what you have, if you don't have a permanent ink, you can always try it and see what it does. It may wick out in the paper because of the water you're putting on there, but it might look really cool, so you never know. It's all about just trying. So I'm going to take this one, and we're going to put that one on there. But before I do that, because that one is not super wet, and it's not wet on top of my lace, I'm going to paint that with glue. I don't have to paint the whole thing. I only need to paint it where my tissue is going to go. But you want to make sure that you get up to the top and all the way around your tissue, because you want those edges to disappear. So when you paint those on there, we'll give it a bit of a press. Maybe I'll even... Now, when you're massaging something like this with the water glue on it, while the water glue is wet, you're good. If it starts to dry, you're going to rip your paper. So you would just stick your finger in your water glue so that your finger kind of glides as you are trying to maybe you're trying to get out some bubbles or some wrinkles. You know, you just don't want to rip it. So that didn't work very well with that. So I'm just going to push it in like that. And what it looks like when you're done, especially when you leave your lace around the outside edges, it looks like you stamped on the lace. You know, you can't stamp on the lace. You'll only get ink wherever the lace is at the top, but you won't get any ink underneath of it. So you'll have a very blotchy stamp. But in this instance, it looks like we've stamped on there, but we haven't. But we have all that texture behind it, but our tissue paper has pretty much disappeared. Now, you know it's there. If you look for it, you can find it. Excuse me. But just in general, you know, if anybody's just looking at it, they're going to think that you stamped on this. And so it looks very cool. So that is our project for today. And I don't have a list again for next week because I'm still not shopping. Today is the 12th, I think, of May. So you won't see this for about 3 weeks, but I'm still, we're still on lockdown here in Michigan, which is totally fine with me because I think we need to do it right to make sure that we don't get sick. I don't want Papa to get sick, and he's 96 years old. So we're going to stay in until we feel like it's safe to go out. Hubby's laid off. I don't know that I should say that that's a good thing, but right now we kind of feel like it is a good thing because that way he's not going out and coming home and possibly bringing it home with him. So these are our 2 projects for today. I think that they both turned out really cute. Bring them up to show you. And there we go. So that is how you put a stamped image on lace or a stamped image on anything that's not even. If you've got, let's say, sandpaper or homemade paper that's very textural and you want to put a stamp on it, you try and stamp on that, you know what it's like. You're not going to get it. So you say, okay, well, I'll stamp on another piece of paper and put it on there, but you see it. So this is a really good way, and it blends in fairly well. I've never had, this is on color, but it's still blending in. We're seeing the edges of the snowflake there, or our homemade lace, but we're not really seeing the edges of the tissue paper there. So again, the trick to that is rip it, and if you look closely, you'll see it. But it really does blend in pretty well on almost everything I've tried. Sometimes maybe really dark paper, you kind of see it. But just remember, don't cut the edge. Rip it so that it's kind of feathery. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.